guitar player for the band The Fantastic Flying Frogs. And today, we're going to talk about guitars that you might want to have in your studio. Guitar number one, I think everybody ought to have one, is the iconic Fender Stratocaster. The Strat is one of those guitars that's been played by everybody, alright? You've got Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Buddy Guy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, David Gilmour, George Harrison played a Strat for a while, Buddy Holly, one of the early adopters of the Strat, Mark Knopfler, Dick Dale, Bob Dylan played a Strat on the Highway 61 sessions and other times. Steve Winwood, one of my favorites, Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys, and I think even Carlos Santana started out on a Strat way back in the day. So a lot of guys like to play the Strat. And what's nice about the Strat is you can see the Strat has 3 pickups. It's got a neck pickup, a middle pickup, and a bridge pickup. And what's really cool about this configuration is you can get either one of these by themselves, and each one gives you a different tone. So here's kind of how that sounds. Here's the neck pickup. It's a very warm sounding position. Then you got your middle pickup. It's a little bit brighter. Then you got your bridge. And originally a Strat only came with 3 positions, but now we have 5 positions. This is the bridge and the middle out of phase. And here's the neck and the middle out of phase, which this is my favorite position. So if you're just starting out and you want to get a guitar that you think will be really good for your studio, you can't go wrong by getting a Strat. Now when you get a Strat, let me give you some advice on what you can do to upgrade your Strat a little bit. Number one, if you're going to be using this in a recording studio, line the entire pickguard and cavity of the Strat with copper foil tape, and I actually have some here today that I could show you. This is copper foil tape, and I use this to line the cavities of guitars that I work on, so that what it does is whenever there's fluorescent lights in a building or neon signs or anything like that, you're going to pick up 60 cycle hum that makes your amp go bzzz all the time whenever you've got a Strat plugged in or anything with single coils. This stuff will cut down an awful lot of that noise and make it a lot nicer for you to play. The other thing you can do is I've added 2 switches to my Strat. Now you can't see them when you're looking at my Strat, but they're right here. I've got one that's a push-pull pot on this knob, and one that's a push-pull pot on that tone knob. And what this does, this one is called a Gilmour switch, named after David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. And basically what it does is it allows me to turn my neck pickup on whenever I'm down here in these other 2 bottom positions. So normally when I'm down here in the bridge pickup, I can't get this position where the bridge and the neck are on at the same time. All I have is a bridge, but if I pull this switch, it turns the neck on, and now I have almost a telecaster sound. Now my guitar is a little bit different because I have a reverse bridge pickup, so it's more like a Jimi Hendrix style. It's supposed to imitate Jimi Hendrix. These are actually Guitar Fetish's Jimi Hendrix pickups in this guitar. So I don't quite get the same telly sound that you might get if you did this to any other Strat. But you can hear a total difference when you do that. Now the other position that I get from this is I can add the bridge, the middle, and the neck when I'm in this position if I pull out on gives it a little bit more oomph, almost like a humbucker. You know, it turns the whole thing into kind of a humbucker. But I added another switch. So also, if I'm in this position, I can flip the bridge and the neck out of phase with this switch. Gives me a really thin, jangly kind of almost a little harsh. But you can EQ it just right and it sounds really cool. So it's another setting. And then if I'm in this position, I can have that switch pulled out and I get almost like an old 60s, or like it sounds like it's going through an old radio or something. So that's all that I can do with my Strat to get a lot of nice sounds out of it. And you can, those are really easy mods that you can do to your guitar too, and you'll be able to get a lot of variety out of one guitar. So if you just can only get one guitar for your studio, I would highly recommend that you make it a Strat. But we're going to go through a lot of different guitars today. So the next guitar we're going to talk about is the Telecaster. So this is a Squier Telecaster that I'm playing today, and I have it set up a little bit differently than a lot of guitars that you might have, but you may want to do this in your studio with at least one guitar. I happen to pick this Telecaster to do it on because it is a semi-hollow body Telecaster, so it's got a little bit more resonance, I think, than a lot of other guitars that I have in my collection. And what I have this strung to is what's called Nashville stringing, or some people call it Nashville tuning. And basically what I've done is I've taken the high strings off of a 12-string guitar set and I've put them on this Telecaster, so that way I can do a little trick in the studio. And if you've ever listened to my band, the Fantastic Flying Frogs, you'll know that we're really into our 12-string guitar sound. And what I like to do in the studio is I like to record a guitar part and I'd like to record a guitar part with this guitar and pan it to the left ear. Then I record the same part with a Stratocaster or sometimes a Jaguar, and I pan it to the right ear. And then I record the exact same part with a 12-string and I put it right down the middle, and it gives a really interesting effect. Song, this is our new song that just came out this month called TV Family. And what I have is in this particular instance, I have a Stratocaster recorded on the left channel, I have the 12-string in the middle and the Telecaster on the right, and this is basically what it sounds like. Here's the Stratocaster by itself. Now we have the Telecaster by itself. I put them together. You can hear that it starts to get that 12-string sound, but I also like to record an actual 12-string. And that's my Harley Benton 12-string that I recorded this on. And when you put all three of them together, here it is in the mix.
now as complicated as it really is. When you struggle,
let me back it up so you can hear where it comes in.
life is always such a breeze. Why do we let the TV lie to us and make believe life's not as complicated as it really is? 'Cause when you're strong and such a whiz, it never really fixes anything at all.
And that lead guitar is my Jaguar. So that's a little trick that you can use when you're trying to mimic a 12-string guitar, especially if you don't have one. You can get a really cool sound just by having two different guitars with different strings on it. And like I said, I like to use my Telecaster for that. Now, the other thing about my Telecaster that's a little unique, I have a different circuit too. I have the Bill Lawrence mod added, so that way I get a five-way. I can use a five-way switch where I get 5 different sounds. And I will say that these changes are a little bit more dramatic when you actually have regular strings on it. But you can hook up the Bill Lawrence wiring system to any Telecaster by using a 5-way switch, and you can get a lot of mileage out of your Telecaster even though it only has 2 pickups. Some famous Telecaster players that you may have heard of are some country players would be Buck Owens and Merle Haggard. But also Johnny Lang's a famous blues guy that played a Telecaster. Bruce Springsteen, Keith Richards, Andy Summers from The Police played a Tele. Muddy Waters did. Jimmy Page, George Harrison again. And Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead was known for playing a Telecaster. So there are a lot of guys out there that really love Teles. And the nice thing about a Tele is you don't have to stick with the lipstick and the Telecaster bridge pickup. You can do all sorts of combos. If you want to put humbuckers in it, you can do all sorts of stuff to hot rod out your Telecaster and make it unique. So that's the Telecaster right there. So I hope that you consider, if you're going to get another guitar for your studio, the Tele might be the one. Hey, this is Lana. She is not really a Fender Jaguar. She's a guitar that I built from a kit, and I had to heavily modify this kit to make it work, but she came out pretty good. And you know what? Most Jaguars don't have a sci-fi girl shooting an alien or a nice spaceship landing on the back, but Lana does. Anyway, Jaguar might be a guitar that you want in your collection. I have modified mine like I do most of my guitars, and I have added an extra pickup right in the middle. I've changed around the wiring so that way I got rid of the treble bleed circuit that is in most Jaguars, and what I added was a pickup switch to turn on the middle pickup. Lana's bridge pickup sounds like this. The middle pickup and the neck pickup. Here's the neck in the middle. And then the bridge in the middle. and then the bridge and the neck. Basically what I've done is I've also added phase switches for the bridge and the neck pickup. So here's the bridge and the neck with the phase, with an in phase. There it is, out of phase. Here's the bridge and the middle out of phase. In phase, I meant. It's out of phase. And here's the neck in the middle. So you get a lot more sounds out of the guitar, although I don't have my pedal board set up to where everything sounds exactly great when I dial it in. But the other thing I did with this one is I still left this tone circuit in, so I've got everything set to where I can have an instant tone change with switch to switch. Jaguar pickups are very different, and a lot of people played Jaguars over the years. Again, one of my favorites was Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys. Johnny Marr from the Smiths played a Jaguar. Kurt Cobain famously played a Jaguar. Otis Rush did. Rick Ocasek and the Ventures, two of the guys in the Ventures played Jaguars, and so did a lot of other people. They are great guitars, so if you can get one, you might want to add it to your studio. Watched my channel, you have seen me modifying this guitar. I started out with a stock Harley Benton 12-string, and I switched it around as much as I could to make it as much like a Rickenbacker 12 as I could possibly make it. But not, 12 strings, there's a lot of different types of 12 strings out there on the market, and they all have kind of a little bit of a different sound. But the Rickenbacker 12 is probably the one that everybody thinks of when they think about 12-string electrics. Some famous people who have been known to play electric 12 strings. Again, I always go back to Carl Wilson because I'm in a band called the Fantastic Flying Frogs, and we play Beach Boy style music. So Carl Wilson, Roger McGuinn from the Byrds was another one of my big heroes on the 12 string. Tom Petty, George Harrison, Peter Buck from REM. The Pretenders guitar player, I can't remember his name, he played electric 12 string. Don Feldner did. Jimmy Page. Susanna Hoffs from the Bangles played a 12 string from time to time. David Gilmour, Pete Townsend, and The Edge are all musicians who have been known to play the 12 string. And 12 strings are not for everybody's studio, but I'm telling you what, if you want a versatile studio and you're looking for that guitar that you might not have, I'm telling you what, a good 12 string is definitely what you want. I can't honestly recommend for a budget studio to go out and get yourself a Rickenbacker. They're not budget friendly. One time I got to play on a 1965 Rickenbacker 12 that, it was a cool guitar, but I can't really say that I liked it any better than my Harley Benton, which cost a fraction, actually cost a tenth of what that one cost new, and not even a 1965 vintage one, a brand new one. This one costs a tenth of what that one cost. And if they still make these are awesome guitars. But Dan Electro makes a nice 12 string. Fender made a 12 string for a while. Gibson made a 12-string. There are Epiphone 12 strings out there. And I actually have 3 different 12 strings. I have this one. I have a 12 string that I made that's a Strat style 12 string, and named Daphne after one of our songs. And it's actually, if you hear the Fantastic Flying Frog song Daphne, you will hear that 12 on that song. And then I also have a acoustic 12 string, a Samick. And they're really good guitars to have if you want them in your studio. Because they just get that sound that nothing else gets. A chorus pedal's not going to get it. You can kind of get it from Nashville tuning a guitar, but they definitely are a unique guitar that probably you want to have in your arsenal. And I'm not going to go into all the mods I made to this guitar, but if you want to, you can check out my other 3 or 4 videos on this channel where I talk about how I modded out this guitar. But this is definitely one that you want to consider for your collection if you're going to have a studio. Iconic Les Paul. This is not my Les Paul, it belongs to a friend of mine. I don't actually own a Les Paul for my studio, so here I am preaching something that I don't actually practice. I have never been a fan of the Les Paul, but I kind of feel like maybe I should probably get one. So, you know, these are about guitars that we might want to have in our studio. There are a lot of people that like Les Pauls that can't afford them. And having a Les Paul in your studio probably is a really good idea. I just happen to know a lot of people that play them, so I don't really need them. People just bring them by. But this Les Paul has a Bigsby tremolo on it. And Les Paul, this one also has incredibly hot pickups in it. If I know my friend Chandler, whose Les Paul this is, I'm guessing these are probably DiMarzio's because I think he's a DiMarzio fan. And he really likes metal. I don't even have a distortion pedal on. I have nothing but the amp simulators that I use. And if you don't know, I'm using Joyo American and British pedals for my amp simulation. But this... I'm telling you, this guitar is so hot. And I have my pedals turned way down, and you can tell that this guitar is way louder than my other guitars. There are a lot of famous Les Paul players, including Les Paul himself, the man. I had a student one time that got to take his Les Paul that his dad bought him to meet Les Paul right before Les Paul died, and he signed it for him. Probably one of the last guitars Les Paul signed, because it was really just like a month later or so that he passed away. But that kid, his guitar instantly shot up in value, but he had Les Paul sign it. So he played it. Slash played it from Guns N' Roses. Jimmy Page, Billy Gibbons, Dwayne Allman, Pete Townsend, and Joe Perry, just to name a few famous Les Paul players. Because you can get that big crunch out of a Les Paul. And for blues, even Clapton played a Les Paul. Chandler needs some new strings, though. These strings are very, very old, and they're cutting my fingers up. Chandler also really likes heavy gauge strings. Which is something you need to consider if you have a studio. You might want to keep a stock of different size gauges of strings in your collection, just in case you have that one player that comes in and he needs a certain size string for his session. It's definitely something to consider. So this is the Les Paul. I hope you have enjoyed it. If it were mine, I would put classic 67s, which you're going to see in the next guitar. This is Irene. This is my SG, and SG is the basically the sequel to the Les Paul. It came out a little bit later, and it was originally called the Les Paul until Les Paul himself said, "I don't like that design, take my name off of it." So then it became the solid guitar. So this is a solid body guitar, and it has a custom paint job. So Eric Clapton owned a guitar called the Fool, and the Fool had a cool paint job, and so I was inspired and I decided to paint Poseidon's daughter on my guitar. And if you want a custom paint job on your guitar and you like this, give me a holler and I will do a paint job for you. I like to paint my guitars. This dude's on the back. He didn't make it out alive, but you know, there he is. And then on the neck, it's got a tentacle going all the way up. It has classic 57 pickups. Actually, I could be wrong. These might be Guitar Fetish 57 pickups that are basically a version of Gibson's classic 57s. And I like to use my SG for rhythm work a lot of times. So if I need like a nice distorted part in the background that just sort of hangs, that's where this guitar kind of comes in. But I'm not going to say that she's not a good lead guitar either, because she could be used for that. Hear that sustain? A very versatile guitar. You can't go wrong with an SG. I used to own a Gibson SG in 1981, and times got hard, and the Gibson had to go away, and I was very sad. I'm still sad about it. But I bought this cheap little Epiphone for nothing, and then I re-outfitted it with nice classic tuners, vintage style tuners. I put in the new pickups. I gave it the new paint job. The only thing I didn't do is I didn't put pickups that I could tap, which in retrospect, that might have been kind of a cool thing to do. And maybe someday, if the need arises, I may go ahead and put some in that I can tap, or see if these are tappable. Some famous SG players are Angus Young, Pete Townsend, and then Eric Clapton and George Harrison both played the same SG. Clapton had it repainted and it got named the Fool. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Frank Zappa, Tommy Iommi, Derek Trucks, and Jimmy Page are all SG players. These are tappable. So that's your SG. Get one, and then send it to me and I'll paint it for you. This is an Ibanez what is it? ES335 dash whole bunch of other stuff. You probably want to have some kind of hollow body in your collection if you're going to have a studio. Now there are a lot of hollow bodies. This is one of the guitars that I own that's a hollow body. And I also own a modified Epiphone Dot, but this one is, as you can see, is actually being a lot of things are being changed up in it. This one has 3 pickups, that one has 2. The Epiphone Dot is a really fun guitar to play, and so is this Ibanez. And there are a lot of different hollow body style guitars that you can get, and a lot of people love hollow bodies. Some famous hollow body players: B.B. King, John Lennon played a Casino. B.B. King, of course, played the ES335, I believe. Johnny Marr played a hollow body. Eric Clapton has been known to play several different ones. Freddie King, Chuck Berry, Eric Johnson. A lot of people. What's his name? The country gentleman. He played the Gretsch. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about... What the heck is it? Oh, Chet Atkins. How could I forget that? The country gentleman himself, Chet Atkins, played a nice hollow body guitar. And you've got lots of companies that make them. Ibanez like this, Gibson, Epiphone, even before it was Gibson. What else? The Gretsch, of course, makes amazing hollow bodies, and I wish that I could have one of those in my collection. One day maybe I'll have a Gretsch added. The thing about hollow bodies is a lot of hollow bodies, either you'll see them with P90 pickups, or a lot of times you'll see them with classic 57 style humbuckers. But Gretsch is its own thing. Gretsch has pickups that they are Gretsch pickups, and they sound totally different than everybody else's pickups. So you can check out a Gretsch, and you will be happy that you get one. But somewhere in your collection, if you're going to have a studio, it is useful to have a hollow body that somebody can use. And like all that I'm talking about today is mainly if you're in a budget studio and you're just getting started and you want to start collecting guitars that you can have on hand for people, you definitely want to have some of these guitars, because a lot of people that are on a budget, they can't afford them, and if you have them available, then they can record and you can get close to some of those iconic sounds that people want to hear on their recordings. Guitar for your collection that you might want to get is something vintage. Do you need to have a vintage guitar to have a recording studio? No. Is it a cool conversation piece to have? Heck yeah. And when people come into your studio, they can be like, what on earth is that? And you can say, this is a 1965 Teisco tulip guitar. I think it's a 65. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I looked up the model before. It's a 1965 tulip, and It's weird, and it is made in Japan way back in the day, and it's got one of the hottest pickups I've ever played in a guitar before. And it's a complete one-trick pony. I mean, it just makes noise, and that's it. And I need to get new strings on this because I haven't changed the strings in at least 2 years. Shame on me. But a cool old guitar in your collection is a nice thing to talk about with other musicians, and you never know, it may just have that certain something that somebody is looking for on their recording. Something else you might want to consider having in your studio is a guitar that's set up for playing slide. This happens to be my guitar that I made out of walnut. It is almost 100-year-old aged Canadian walnut, and the pickguard is made out of Indiana Osage orange, or what we call hedgewood up in Indiana, and the neck's maple with a rosewood fretboard. And I built this guitar myself. It is chambered, so it looks like a solid body, but inside it's 3 pieces, and the middle piece is hollow, and the bottom piece is routed out, and the top piece is routed out a little bit, so there's all these cavities in here to make it sustain. It's also got through the body stringing, and as you can tell, I can come back in about 10 minutes and it'll still be sustaining. It's a cool guitar. I've made several guitars that sustain really well. I made a cigar box guitar once that I actually timed it for 1 minute and 20 seconds, I think. It kept sustaining. This one's doesn't quite sustain that much. I was joking about the 10-minute thing. But it's a ripper of a guitar for playing slide, and I've got these dual rail pickups. And of course I have my basic wiring just like I did my Jaguar. It's the same way on this. I've got a bridge pickup. I got a middle pickup. And a neck. You can do the neck and the bridge. Put them out of phase. Put all 3 of them. All sorts of sounds out of this guitar, and it just tears things up. I have a tune-o-matic bridge that I use for it. Like I said, through the body stringing, all my different switches. I love this guitar. And I did not build it out of a kit. I actually built this one myself. I need to give it a good name. I kind of have a name for it, but I'm not. I don't know. Before I started playing surf, I played in blues bands, and I really like playing slide guitar, so you never know when you're going to need a good slide guitar in your studio. So having one set up just for slide is not a bad idea, and you can have it done real easily, or you can set it up yourself. There's tons of YouTube videos, but basically you just raise your bridge a little bit and voila, you got a slide guitar. Alright, you want to have a couple acoustic guitars in your collection. I have had several acoustic guitars over the years. One of my favorites was a Fanon, which I don't know if you can find them. I know I've played 2 or 3 of them in my life, and I haven't seen very many of them. And I kind of kicked myself for getting rid of it. It was an awesome guitar my cousin gave me, and when I moved here I needed the money, so I sold it. Don't know why I did that. So it's good to have a couple acoustics. This is a Luna that a friend of mine gave me. I really like playing it. Yes, it is a little girly, but when girls come to record, they kind of like this kind of stuff. So it's okay to have a girly guitar in your collection, guys. Don't feel bad. And I have this running through my pedal board right now. I don't even have it mic'd up. It's just a really nice sounding guitar. You can mic them up, and I could if I wanted to, but to be honest, this is the 3rd time I've recorded this video, and I have had so much trouble, so I've just decided I'm not going to mic up the acoustics today. I'm just going to plug them in. But you gotta admit, this is a nice sounding guitar plugged in for an acoustic. And what I like about it is you can really change it and get like different, like, there tends to be, in my opinion, 2 sounds to acoustic guitars. You've got bright sounding guitars and you've got really warm sounding guitars. And when I think of the 2 big ones, I think of Martins, to me, seem to be a little bit more of a warm sounding guitar, whereas Taylors tend to be a bright sounding guitar. But the nice thing about EQ, you can really fake things a lot with EQ, and when it's in the mix, a lot of times it's hard to tell. And so with this guitar, you can adjust a lot of the parameters, and you can get a darker sounding guitar that way. Or you can get a really bright sounding, almost brittle. All sorts of different tones just by how you dial in the EQ on a guitar like this. And a lot of people forget that. They think, oh, I just have it set a certain way and that's kind of it. No, you can really sort of mimic some of the other sounds of guitars that you might not necessarily have in your collection that will probably work in the mix that you're trying to record if you just EQ it right. So that's my Luna guitar that I have. You know what? I didn't even think of this. I do have it running through a mic because I've got my vocal mic right there. But anyway, that's pretty much what it sounds like. So this is a classical guitar. It is made by a company called Continental, and I picked this up at a Goodwill store for $10. I could not believe that I had seen this cool little classical guitar. I did change the tuners. I did put in a bone bridge and a bone nut, and I put in a piezo pickup just so that way I could plug it in. I don't have it mic'd up other than through this vocal mic. It actually, I'm going to unplug for a minute. You hear it with just the mic itself. It's hard to play with your elbow on the table. It's a nice sounding little guitar. I really like playing it, and it's, if you can find a classical guitar for fairly cheap, I would say pick one up and add it to your studio too, because you just never know. You may just need that touch of something that's those nylon strings. And you just can't get that on any other guitar. This is the only kind of guitar that you're really going to get that sound out of. And the nice thing about classical guitars is it really doesn't have to be the most expensive guitar to really get a nice sound. You just got to know kind of how to set your guitar up to where it sounds pretty good and how to mic it. And once you mic it up pretty well, you're going to get a really good sound out of maybe not so much of an expensive guitar. Now, there are really good expensive classical guitars out there, and yes, they sound amazing, but you know, for a budget studio, for a lot of projects that you might be doing when you're just starting out, a cheap little classical guitar is definitely something that you want to keep in on your shelf somewhere. Some classical players that you might have heard are in the past are Andre Segovia, John Williams, Brian May, Steve Howe, Steve Hackett, and Phil Keaggy. this is a Samick 12 string. There are lots of different 12 strings. I mentioned that I have a few of them. This is one that I like to use. I actually have it plugged up, but you don't need it plugged up to sound really good. And if you want to get that Tom Petty Americana jangle, you want to get yourself some kind of a 12 string. Do you want to be on TV? Is that what it is? Come here. I will show you. You can be up here with the people and you can say hi. This is Monkey. And Monkey, he thinks he can play the guitar. But he doesn't have opposable thumbs. And every time he tries to play the guitar, all he does is tear them up. Right, Monkey? Yes. You are pathetic. You need to go find yourself something to do because you're way too hot. 12-string acoustic players that were pretty popular were Glenn Campbell, Lead Belly, Blind Willie McTell, Paul Brady, Leo Kottke, Tom Petty, of course, George Harrison, Pete Seeger, David Bowie, Taylor Swift, David Gilmour, Jimi Hendrix, Chet Atkins, Gordon Lightfoot, and Neil Young. Now, I mentioned before you might want to have a slide guitar set up in your studio, and I have two of them actually. I have an acoustic dobro that I built, resonator style. I built this out of an old a Kona guitar that I had. The bridge, the bracings underneath the bridge broke. And instead of repairing it, I thought, well, you know what? I will turn it into a resonator. So I built the cone, or the circle inside that it sits in, got the cone and all that stuff, and I built this guitar out of it. And I'm really happy that I did because it's a cool guitar. I have a piezo pickup in the inside, and I have this Dean Markley, so I can either plug it in or I can use it acoustically. And I don't think I'm giving it quite justice with this mic setup. There's a whole host of people that played resonators, from bluegrass players to blues and all sorts of other stuff. You sure can find use for this sound. So that's a tour of all the guitars that I have in my studio. There are a few that I'd like to get, maybe some other guitars to add. I kind of think I probably need a guitar with P90s in it. I feel like I probably need a Les Paul so that I can quit borrowing my buddies. You also want to have a good bass. A P bass is a good bass to have. Yeah, I don't have one, and I need one. I do have a peavey Millennium bass, but I hate that thing. And so I'm not even going to advertise it for them. But get a P bass or something like that, and you'll have a good start for your studio. And if anybody comes, you'll have any kind of guitar that you can to let them use in your studio. So if you have any other recommendations for a guitar that I might need or that somebody else might want to have in their starting studio, and of course, starting studio is like, this has taken me 30 years to collect all these guitars, but the idea is some stuff that people want to have in their studio. Put it down in the comments below and share with us. But you have a good day. God bless you, and we'll catch you in another video. And if you haven't checked out the Fantastic Flying Frogs, please go check out our music. It's all on this channel, and I hope that you like it, especially if you like Beach Boys surf stuff. I think you'll really like the Frogs.